So native forests, such as this Scottish pine wood at Abernethy RSPB Reserve, would obviously have had disturbance in the past. And here you can see there's been a windthrow. All of these trees have been blown down by the wind at a large scale. So what are the consequences of that? I'm here with Richard Mason. Tell me what's going on here.
Yeah, so here there was a storm blow that came through here in 2013, and it kind of ripped up the hill and took down, well, definitely hundreds, maybe over 1,000 mature Scots pine trees, and just ripped them right up and put these root plates up in the air. Deadwood kind of down on the ground, some still standing, some individual trees not hit and still here. And what's then happened since is really interesting. So something that we struggle with here at Abernethy is broadleaf tree regeneration because of herbivory from deer, combined with often low light levels, a lack of disturbed ground, historic removal of seed trees. We have a real lack of broadleaf trees. We have lots of Scots pine, not many broadleaves.
So are there any here?
But here we've got quite a few. So just where we're stood, we can see a birch tree here. It's taller than me. Maybe seeded in at the bottom of this root plate here and grown up. We've then, if we look at the root plates all around us, we can see a rowan over here. There's a little willow on top of one here, and a much bigger willow over here. And these look like they've grown on the root plates and then been out of reach of deer. So they've been able to grow, and also boosted by the light levels in here, which are much higher than in most of the forest.
So this disturbance has, seems to have benefited the diversity of species and had a big ecological impact. So, so is this something that should be mimicked, particularly in plantations?
Yeah, I think so. And so we're doing a lot of that here to try and recreate this natural process in an artificial way. And for similar reasons, to try and get increased broadleaf regeneration, but also to benefit invertebrates, plants and birds.
Fabulous. So should we go and have a look at some?
Go and have a look.
We've seen from the natural windblow what an impact it has. There's a whole range of trees that were growing there that we didn't see anywhere nearby, the rowan and the willow and the birch. So it seems to be a beneficial component of the ecosystem. But what do you do, particularly if you have a plantation which is of even age with very little open habitat? So what can we do about this? Well, tell me, Richard, what do we do for this sort of area?
So there's a few things we can do, and we've been quite busy in this area with a couple of them. So one is to ring bark. So by that we mean to sever the bark and the cambium of the tree. We use a draw knife, and you use that to cut all the way around the tree. And this one was ring barked maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and you can see here the scar from that. And then above this, the tree has died off, and we now have a standing dead tree, or a snag. And I can see from here lots of holes from invertebrates, from often exit holes from beetles coming out of the tree. Often we'll see those then excavated by woodpeckers to get to the larvae, and eventually we can see cavities with nesting birds like crested tits higher up the tree. But also sometimes we try our best to ring bark, but the tree persists. So in this case we've missed a small piece here, and the tree has regrown. And when we look up, the tree still has some green needles in the top and is surviving and living on. And we think that's quite interesting, that there may be species that specialise in these weakened trees. We expect it will die more quickly than an untouched tree. And it may be that this area forms interesting kind of rot holes in the future that get used by other species of invertebrate, fungi, lichens.
So that seems a very good way of killing trees in the deadwood community. And as you say, it seems to take some time to happen. What else can be done?
So over here we've taken a different approach, where we've winched over trees. So we bring a tractor with a forestry winch into the area and attach a winch cable partway up the tree and then pull them over. And sometimes we do this just individual trees within a wood to add in a piece of deadwood. Sometimes, like here, we do a larger patch and we're trying to emulate a storm blow. So we often winch them all in a similar direction, and we often deliberately leave some angled up, not all the way down on the ground. And in here we see all sorts of different kind of habitat features, giving opportunities to lots of different species. So from the trees that are not fully down on the ground, they will bake and harden, become very resinous, and that can be important for some lichen species, often very rare, as well as some wood-boring insects. The trees that are down on the ground are more likely to rot, become wet, quite quickly be colonised by mosses, by lichens, and often we see young trees germinating into the bark and growing up to form the next generation.
And then there's some pools I see that's been created.
Yeah, so this bit of ground was quite wet, and the root plates, when they come up here, can form these amazing pools, and we can see lots of pond skaters in there at the moment. These pools are only 2 years old, and we see damselflies, water beetles, including some quite specialist species that utilise this quite niche habitat in the forest.
And you're saying that there's some species, water beetles, that seem to like the very dark areas, so where the trees have been partly pulled down is probably perfect for them.
Yeah, that's right. So there's, I forget the names, but there's some incredibly rare water beetles that are only known on a handful of sites, and they're mostly found in dark, wet holes underneath partially fallen trees. And we can't see them here, but some of these will be just like that and really recreating that specialist habitat.
So if we compare it with the plantation that we started off with, I guess what you've done is you created this enormous diversity of different habitats, and particularly for invertebrates where we don't really know what they want, by providing dark areas, sunny areas, rotting logs, dry logs, shaded areas. You're probably enormously increasing the diversity of invertebrates here.
Yeah, I think so. There's some species that we know quite well what they need and we can do very targeted management, but often we don't know that detail. And I think this variety of habitat will provide a lot of opportunity, certainly in comparison with a normal area of plantation with far fewer features, like these root plate pools.
And then you're monitoring this as well?
We are, yes. So we've got kind of a mixture of long-term science projects where we have, where we're monitoring deliberate management and seeing how that affects particularly beetle communities. But we also have some monitoring looking at fungi and lichen, bryophyte, woodland bird, vegetation communities to see how they all, in the long term, respond to this management type.
And as I understand it from the experiment that's comparing pulling trees down and ring barking and controls, that the ring barking, as we've discussed, can take time, and so the bark beetles take some time to arrive. But if it's pulled down, the response is actually pretty quick.
That's right, yeah. So just in 3 years, we've seen a significant increase in bark beetle species diversity and abundance in winch trees. We've seen an increase in ringbarked, but it's not yet significant, so we'll carry on monitoring those. We think that'll come in time, but both certainly increase that species richness of beetles. Yeah.
So this is fairly dramatic management. What do you think the role of this is? When would we actually use this?
So we're using it here in plantation areas. So often in those areas the deadwood level is very, very low, often below 5 meters cubed per hectare. We think that natural levels in boreal forest is upwards of 60 meters cubed, sometimes up to 120, 130. So in those scenarios we have very low deadwood content, and because of that poor diversity of deadwood specialist species, so this management will be most powerful in those situations where you can increase your deadwood to bring it closer to a natural level.
So there's lots of talk of increasing deadwood, and normally that's wood piles. So it's kind of, this is much more spectacular. And it's very interesting to see what the consequence of this will be. And you can see how just the diversity of habitats here is incredibly impressive.
Good, I agree. I think so too.